Good evening, everyone. I will call to order the semi-monthly meeting, the State of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council. Today is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. Thank you to staff and everyone else that came out in the weather. We did monitor it during the day to make sure that it'd be safe for everyone, and we felt that with the snow stopping and the temperature rising a little bit during the day, that it would be okay if we had the meeting, because I know we have some important matters that we want to address. So thank you for being careful coming here. And I'll just remind everyone, when you leave, please exhibit the same amount of caution when you leave. Prior to our formal agenda going down, I do want to go on record, publicly acknowledge Mr. Jerry Sahajian. Jerry Sahajian was a longtime member of CRMC with over 24 years of dedicated service to the Coastal Resources Management Council. Since our last meeting, Jerry had tendered his resignation from the council. Jerry, going way back, was on dock subcommittee, as I remember, other committees along the way, served on subcommittees for applications, and I think always brought some dedication and insight to the applications that were before us. So as chair, I just want to go publicly on the record and acknowledge Mr. Sahajian and thank him for his many years of dedicated service to the council. And with that, then I will now move to our formal agenda. First matter on the agenda is approval of the minutes of Tuesday, January 24, 2023. I know they have been disseminated by Lisa. And if everyone's had an opportunity to look at them, I'd entertain any changes that might need to be made. Or if not, if there's a motion to accept them as presented, I would entertain that.
Move acceptance.
Motion has been made to accept them. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Let the record reflect that they were unanimously approved. I did jump ahead on one thing. Let the record reflect council members that are present and staff members that are present here for attendance purposes. Next matter is subcommittee reports.
There are no subcommittee reports tonight, Mr. Chair.
Any staff
I
reports?
just have an update on a couple of matters. Mostly I just want to remind you, and you really don't need reminding, but we have a number of wind farms that are under review by staff right now. We have the Revolution Wind Farm, we have Sunrise Wind, we have New England Wind, and we have South Coast Wind, which was formerly called Mayflower Wind. All those exist out in federal waters, and three of those four exist within our geographic location descriptor, so that we have some federal consistency review authority on those matters. Each one of them has decision timeframes that we will be bringing our staff recommendation to you over the course of these next several months throughout into the end of the summer right now as it stands, although those decision deadlines might change depending on how much review information and time we need for each one of those. But one of those, the South Coast project, also has submitted a state application to bring their export cable, which is the cable that would take the electricity generated by the turbines into the grid here in New England. They want to take their cable up into the Sakonnet River. So they will cross into state waters, find their way to the Sakonnet River and come up the river. And as their application states, make landfall in Portsmouth, go underneath the town of Portsmouth and pop out on the other side, if you will, and find its way into Mount Hope Bay, and then eventually over into Massachusetts waters on its way to find landfall there at the old Brayton Point station. That just came in this week. And staff will be spending time reviewing that as a staff application, a category B application, similar to how we spent time looking at the Revolution Wind export cable that came up the West Passage. We have no time frame on that. As you all know, staff reviews for category B applications usually take several months anyway. This one will have many complicated matters that I'm sure staff will be asking a lot of questions on and seeking answers from the developer. But I did want to alert you to the fact that we did have an application for state waters for an export cable from the South Coast project. Then lastly, just to let you know, CRMC every year has a booth at the Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Association Annual Saltwater Fishing Show at the Convention Center next weekend, not this coming, but the weekend after. Come visit. Well, we have a number of booths along with our sister agency DEM, and we're partnering with the university and the Saltwater Anglers Association with a recreational fishing survey that will be conducted at the fishing show, where we're trying to get an idea of where recreational fishing occurs in Rhode Island waters, so that staff have another data set to look at for applications that are occurring in state waters and understanding what the recreational fishing impacts may or may not be there. And then lastly, at the same show, we're bringing our trash trailer. I think we've talked to you about that before, which has been extremely successful in bringing it to various events around the state as well as school systems, where we show what had been dredged up in the Providence River inside the hurricane barrier up to Water Place Park from people that are just throwing trash in the water, or things get picked up by the wind, like plastic garbage cans, and you name it, staff found it in the dredging project in the sediment of that water body, and we've turned it into a trailerable activity, if you will, where people can walk into the trailer, see what was collected during that dredging project, and try to educate the public to hold on to your trash and find the proper receptacle for it, and not have it wind up in the marine waters of the state. So that was it, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to bring you up on a couple of matters.
Just
Yes,
one question, if I could. Are we looking at one cable or two, Jeff?
Great question, Mr. Gomez. So in preliminary talks with South Coast, before they filed their application, they had talked to us about bringing one cable up, but with the possibility of two. And we said, well, if you're bringing up two and you're proposing two, we want to see it, even though you might not need it, according to them. They didn't want to bring two into the application, but we insisted on seeing the two, because if there is another phase, if you will, to a project, we always want to see the project build out in our initial review.
Because you need certain separations and there could be conflict.
We don't know. We really haven't had a chance to delve into the application yet, but I'm sure those are the type of questions we'll
I know
find.
we had mentioned that at one of our previous meetings that there might be two.
And yes,
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Willis by the council? If not, we'll go to our first application. It's an application requiring a special exception for council review and action. That being Plum Beach Club. The parties are ready, the applicant ready on that, they can come forward. That is 2021-02-053. Plum Beach Club, an application for modification of an existing recreational boating facility to provide for more stable floats. Work consists of relocating piles and raising pier 10 feet to actually 10 inches to provide for 4 foot of clearance at high tide. Replace the 2 seaward floats at the end of 2 4x5x16 floats with 2 floats. I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry. They want to replace the 2 seaward floats at the end of the facility, each 8x16, with 2 new floats, each 9x17. On the north side of the pier, replace 2 4x5x16 floats with 2 floats. One will be 4.5 times 12, and the other being 4.5 by 16. Total increase of floatage is 32 square feet, i.e. total permitted is 400 square feet, total proposed 432 square feet. The facility as proposed will be within 45 feet of the town mooring field and 65 feet seaward of mean low water. Special exception referencing the Red Book 650-RICR-20-00-01, section 1.1.8. is required to expand the recreational facility and CRMP designated type 2 waters. Parentheses reference section 1.1.5A, table 1, type 2 waters matrix, as any new recreational structures are prohibited in type 2 waters. It's located at Plat 41, Lot 69, 255 Plum Beach Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Very technical description with a lot of numbers. Is the applicant on Plum Beach Club present?
I'm here. My name is Arthur Burt. I'm a board member, also the chair of the facilities committee. So overseeing the dock project as well.
You can come forward and sit at the table, please.
Sir, please raise your right hand.
Sure.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Surely. Arthur Burt, ARTHUR, last name Burt, BERT. Board member of Plum Beach Club and finance committee chair and facilities chair.
Okay, so staff is gonna give their pitch first. And then if necessary, we'll hear from you. Is the other gentleman to your left going to be testifying also?
If necessary, sir, yes.
Okay.
Warren Hall.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Hall. I didn't recognize you. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Warren Hall, WARRENHALL.
Sorry about that. Is Mr. Craven going to be representing the applicant?
No, I just came to see you.
That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign.
These are my neighbors. I'm a member of the Plum Beach Club, so I'm here as a legislator. And I would be testifying as necessary.
Okay, I'm assuming you're gonna be giving legal testimony. We're not gonna swear you in.
Correct.
Okay, and staff will go first.
I have a solution, I believe.
The chair, I'll give you a summary project. The boating facility has been in existence for numerous years, dating back to prior to at least 1969. Its current use is for a private club or beach club. It's used for small crafts such as kayaks, sailboat dinghies, and like SUPs. The existing facility was never authorized by CRMC until 2021, when we gave them this assent 2021-3. And it was based on acceptable demonstration of its pre-existence. The applicant wishes to expand the facility. Expansion includes float site increases and length increases that would be described. Due to CRMC regulations, this application requires a special exception, as any new recreational structures in type 2 waters are prohibited. In order to be granted a special exception to prohibit activity, the activity would have to benefit the public as a whole. To address this, the applicant has stated the improvements will provide safer access for the town of Kingstown Marine Rescue and also for the town of North Kingstown. Note that a letter from the town's fire marshal has stated that the facility has been used frequently for emergency patient transfers. There was an objection by Save the Bay. They submitted an objection to the granting of the special exception, stating that the applicant has not addressed the special exception criteria. Since then, this was back in July, I think. Since then, the applicant has addressed the reasoning for the modification and for the special exception, and that was that the expansions needed for the emergency landing of the town of North Kingstown. Based on the above, staff defers to the council for the granting of the special exception. And if the special exception is granting, it is staff's engineer's opinion that the expansion is relatively minor and therefore has no objections to the project.
Any questions?
Just-
Council, yes, just to Gomez.
Would you just discuss the pile extraction a little bit? Why is that normal to extract the whole pile?
They try to. It's difficult for them to pull out the pile sometimes when they're that old. So they will cut to the mud line We usually stipulate that they go down a foot or maybe 2 feet down below if they can't pull the pile as a whole. But they usually do try to pull them out because it's small work for them to go, dive and cut the pile.
It looked like it was mentioned in several places and looked like the town wanted.
The town did want it, that
So
they.
it's gonna be a best attempt, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we would stipulate that they would, at least make an attempt to extract the piles as whole. And if that's not possible, at least cut, the piles down 1 foot below the mud line.
2 foot below?
Is it, whatever I wrote.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's 2 feet. Yeah, I'll address that.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
It's all,
Could you just clarify the compelling public purpose? I know it said that the North Kingstown has a rescue boat that launches or lands at that dock, and is that,
As I understand it, the rescue boat lands there when there's an accident of some sorts or there's someone that has to be rescued and they have to bring them to, emergency care. They will land their rescue vehicle, boat vessel at the dock.
there's no other dock anywhere around there?
Not that I am aware of.
any other questions, Mr. Lucia?
Just one more question. So
Yes, Ms. Reynolds.
the stated purpose of the modification is to provide more stable floats, and does that relate to the rescue operation also?
As I understand it, yes, the fire marshal had stated that this will be helpful for them to transport the patients when they have them.
I don't know, open it to the applicant for presentation.
Can give you a bit of an overview, Mr. Chair. If there are any additional questions, I'm happy to clarify. The application, I think, had all of the technical details in terms of dimensions. I mean, I can give the council a bit of an overview because as I was listening to the presentation, if you weren't familiar with it, it would sort of sound like we're trying to build a much larger dock. Our original objective in replacing our dock, which is now 40 plus years old, it has just become unsafe with some of the pilings absolutely eroded. And we're just trying to build the dock as close to its original as possible. In doing that, when that dock was built 40 some years ago, there were some different stipulations. So in order to build it like for like, but also comply with existing stipulations and provide more safety and stability, we have to make a few minor modifications. For example, the clearance above the high water mark is not adequate when we have a tropical storm and other things. The dock can actually be submerged below the waves and the tide. Number two, our northernmost floats at low tide rest on the seabed. We understand that cannot happen, so we're actually going to be reducing the size of our northernmost floats and extending them seaward a little bit. Also, because of the 10-inch rise of our fixed dock, the typical rise to run to make sure we have a safe angle for people to walk up and down the gangplank is a 3-to-1. So for every one we go up, we have to go out 3. We've kept the linear dock space, i.e. the actual dockage by which our kayaks and boats can come up, identical. It was 132 linear feet. It is going to be 132 linear feet. The only thing we've done is expand the width a little bit by the floating docks by about 1 foot and also the length by 1 foot, and that does provide a little more stability. Also for the size of the town of North Kingston fire marshal boats, rescue boats, they like to actually have a little bit more length as they come up, and it gives them more space for rescue operations. There was a question regarding the rescue operations. Our dock is very close to the Jamestown Bridge. There's typically, as the tides are coming in and out, there's a lot of turbulent water there. You get a lot of fishing boats who go in there and try to fit on the piers. They get caught in that turbulent water. So there's a greater frequency of boating accidents around the piers of the dock. Also, in the unfortunate instance that we have a jumper from the bridge. Again, our dock is the closest point of extraction. So all the rescue boats do all their rescue operations around the Jamestown Bridge. and then use our dock because it is the only dock nearby that actually has access for an ambulance to come down and extract victims. So again, but to summarize, again, we are trying to build the dock as close to like for like as possible as it sits today. But because of the raise, because of the stability requirements in moving things off the sand at low tide, we're making minor modifications. And those minor modifications do result in the dock extending out a couple more feet than it does as it sits today. So I'll pause there if there are any other questions.
Any questions of council members? Okay. Anyone else at your table?
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I would just add that the new piles to support the float, there'll be green heart piles, which would be a stronger type pile, so that'll help anchor the new floats to the sea bottom. The plans do call for a soft start to all pile driving operations. This came from the Corps of Engineers suggestions for one of my peers a while ago, and I call it out on all my peers now, and it's so that it gives the animals and fish a chance, an opportunity to leave the area before full pile driving happens. So that's on the drawings, and the remove and dispose to 2 feet below grade, we've incorporated that into the plans. There'll be a turbidity fence included as part of the demolition of the existing pier. And that's what I have there.
Any questions of council members of Mr. Hall?
Just one
Mr.
quick
Lopez.
one. You stated a couple of times the deterioration and the changes with sea level and storms and things like that. I was just wondering, is there are we addressing the fact that I think the boats are kind of bigger now and things like that also? Are we, from a depth standpoint, you are raising it up some or not?
So we're raising the fixed portion of the pier. And because of that, our ramp that goes down to the floating docks are going to be 1 to 3. I'm not sure about the boats that we use for the recreational boating. It's
All right,
touch and go. There are no boats,
Not large boats and stuff.
yeah, no large boats there. It's more just touch and go for smaller boats in the mooring field.
I saw it when I saw it, there's a necessary modification and was wondering why we were really looking at a special exception when it seemed it fell under that. But I did go through the, what was it, Save the Bay, I think, wrote something, and it looks like we've addressed their concerns. So, thank you.
All right, any further questions of Mr. Hall from council? Attorney Craven, anything to add?
Briefly, the special exceptions that Save the Bay is concerned about. I lived in North Kingstown for this time next year, it'll be 50 years. So I've gotten to know, they actually accept the kid from Washington Park now as being a resident in Saunderstown in North Kingstown.
Excuse me. So why isn't he being sworn in? Because that's a fact witness. You said it was going to be legal advice or legal counsel. That's not.
Yeah, I don't mind swearing him in. I'm so used to Mr. Craven
I know.
acting as a lawyer, right?
But it doesn't seem like that's what he's doing, for the record.
I intend to.
But you're speaking about facts, so I just feel like for the sake of all the other witnesses who've done so.
The health, safety, and welfare issues that associate itself with the special exception. I
Mr.
made
Craven,
an
why
attempt.
don't we just have be sworn in?
Okay, sure.
So that if there is something that may be an opinion or something, it's covered.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
State your name and spell it for the record.
Robert Craven, C-R-A-V-E-N.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I represent this district and I'm a member of the club. I reached out to Scott Patel, who's he's the fire chief, and asked him, how he felt about this, what was important to him, because I'm aware, any club member is aware of the frequency to which the police department and fire department come with rescue, particularly to save people. Now, saving people from boating accidents, I'm not saying there aren't fatalities or serious injuries, because there are. But every time there's a jumper, it's it's panic time. They get there as soon as possible. They know the window of saving someone's life is very slim. This is what I get from the police, from the fire chief. We have a serpentine road. When I say road, it actually is an extension of Plum Beach Road. It's deeded, and it's part of the original subdivision in 1901. So the rescue can actually come down this very graveled serpentine road and get to the beach, which takes a lot of the aggravation about trying to get somebody ASAP off the boat, down the dock, and onto an ambulance to get them out and to the needed healthcare ASAP. And I believe that this is something that's essential for, and it's like a duty, so to speak, as far as I'm concerned, that the club make the facility available to the police department to do, and the fire department to do their job. And we do it willingly. Right now, it's not that safe. And the chief of the fire department agrees. It would be far more functional and far more helpful. And if you, in my opinion, if you can save one life, you've done something in life. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but I think it's compelling that the fire chief thinks this is very important to his function as the fire chief that has the rescue that will be picking essentially all those people that jump off on the Jamestown Bridge and float or swim or whatever to the west side of Narragansett Bay.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's all.
Does the municipality and the fire department, are they supporting your efforts to construct this
Absolutely.
increase? In other words, are they contributing towards it for their use?
No.
Sounds, so it's just a permissive use that you grant
Correct.
by way of, as it rights to your property, you're just voluntarily allowing this access?
Well, it would
And
be
you're
very-
voluntarily upgrading the facility for the use by the municipality?
Well, one of the uses, the essential use is the municipality. And for them to have an ownership interest, like paying for part of the repairs or the replacements, would confuse the ownership of that docking facility. So since it's had a 40-year life and the fire department has been able to use it, we feel as though that we want to continue to make that available to them as a more useful function in saving people's lives at our own expense, because we have to fix it anyways. It's run its course as far as its life is concerned.
Any other questions of Mr. Craven? I say Mr., I know you're an attorney, you're a representative, but I'm calling Mr. purposes of your testimony.
Sure.
Anything else from the applicant? Any questions from council or anyone at the applicant table? Rich, anything to add in light of what's been said?
Now, I guess the next step is what you have to vote on the special exception. Correct?
Okay. So first matter we'll address is the special exception. If the council is in a position or anyone is in a position to make a motion on the special exception, now is the time.
Were there any objectors? Did you ask that?
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Anyone else present this evening that wishes to speak in favor of this application or in opposition of this particular application? Let the record reflect none. So we're posture for a motion on the special exception.
I'll give it a try. And from my viewpoint and based on the discussions we've had and the findings of fact, this modification is necessary because of the deterioration of the present structure. It does appear to me that it fits under the rules of a modification, a true modification, but it does serve and apparently has in the past, serve a compelling public service to the town of North Kingston. So based on that the feeling that it is a modification, and in fact, a modification and a compelling public service, I would move the special exception.
Motion has been made to grant the special exception. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Izzy. Any discussion? I'll now poll the council. Mr. Izzy? Aye. Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
I too vote aye. Mr. Gagnon, I'm sorry. Mr. Gagnon votes aye. I too vote aye. So it's 6 votes in favor of the granting of the special exception. Second matter to be addressed is the application itself. So I would entertain a motion to approve the application as presented if the council deems fit.
Make the motion that we should approve the application with the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
A motion has been made to approve the application by Mr. Gagnon. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Gomez. I'll poll the council. Mr. Izzy? Aye. Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon? Aye. Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. Let the record reflect that it was 6 votes in favor, none opposed on the application itself, unanimously approved. You're all set. Thank you.
very much, Chairman.
Next matter is Rhode Island Commerce Corporation. That's 2021-03-090. That is a 21.9 acre paved area in Quonset Business Park for parking and a future laydown area for port operations, 2 new water quality infiltration basins are proposed to meet state stormwater management requirements. Approximately 10,000 cubic yards of excess material will be used to create 5-foot-high berms located east of the paved area and within the coastal buffer zone. A maximum 122-foot buffer zone variance from the 150-foot buffer zone standard is required for fill berms, pavement, and stormwater features within the 150-foot buffer zone. It is located at plat 192, lots 10, 2, 5, 7, 8, and 9. Thompson Road, North Kingston, Rhode Island. I see applicants at the table, so I know someone's present. But that
Will you both be testifying?
Yes.
Okay, starting from my left, please raise your right hand and do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Chelsea Siefer, CHELSEA, SIEFERT. I'm the Director of Planning and Development on the Development Corporation.
You swear or affirm to, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Gina Capalbo. I'm Project Manager of Engineering for the Quonset Development Corporation. You spell my name GINACAPALBO.
Thank you.
and Amy Silva has this for staff. If you could present, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to point out, unfortunately, there is a slight error in the description in the agenda. It looks like the description was the original project that was submitted in 2021. So the portion at the end of the description describing the 5-foot high berms and the buffer zone variance is no longer accurate. It is still a 21.9 acre paved area in Quonset for parking and laydown areas for port operations. It does contain new water quality infiltration basins. It will contain a couple of structures. It is offering a 150-foot buffer zone, and a portion of Thompson Road will be relocated. The application before the council tonight is here as a freshwater wetland application, although both programs do apply. In situations where both CRMC regulatory programs apply, the applicant submits an application under the most stringent regulatory applicability. In this case, it was the freshwater wetlands regulatory program, as freshwater wetlands will be filled as part of this project. Within the application, coastal regulations were addressed as the project also lies along the shoreline. This project was submitted prior to the change in the freshwater wetland regulations. So it was reviewed under, quote, the old freshwater wetland regulations, 650-RICR-20-00-2. As I mentioned, a portion of Thompson Road, which is currently quite close to the shoreline, will be removed and relocated further inland. According to the submitted application, the amount of freshwater wetland to be permanently altered by the new Thompson Road is 38,420 square feet. The portion of Thompson Road that is being removed will be restored to freshwater wetland shrub swamp contiguous to the coastal wetlands currently existing on site. The area of wetland that will be restored is 38,612 square feet. Staff has reviewed the application and feels that it does meet the freshwater wetland impact and avoidance requirements. It does meet the Red Book requirements as far as buffer zone and setbacks are concerned. There were no objections during the public comment period. From the general public, there was a request from the town of North Kingstown to minimize paved area and increase buffer, which were done as part of the revisions after the initial submission. Staff has no objections to the council approval of this application, and in addition to standard ascent stipulations, has submitted 5 additional stipulations in the staff reports.
Has the applicant been made aware of the additional stipulations?
Yes, they received the staff reports.
Anything else? Any questions of council members of Ms. Silva? Swell?
You said that just for clarification, that this description here on the agenda is incorrect, and you started to state what still is in existence. I noticed that this language is right off the public notice that was issued, that's in the packet. So are there substantive changes in this language? And I see there's many dates where there's been additional information submitted since this was noticed. Are there substantive changes that would have modified the public notice in your opinion? Based on, you said this is just not accurate, but this is exactly what was noticed. Yeah.
It becomes a discussion of the 2 different regulatory programs. The freshwater wetland program does not have a mandatory public notice the way the Red Book regulatory program does. So when the application was initially submitted, it was requesting quite a lot of work within 200 feet and some significant variances to the Red Book requirements as far as buffer zones and setbacks were concerned. That application was put on hold, and the project was redesigned, and when it was resubmitted to us, it met the Red Book requirements for buffer zones and setbacks, and now had impacts within freshwater wetlands. Freshwater wetlands does not have the requirement for public notice, so it was not sent to a renotice.
I actually have this is a significant issue. I have a question on this.
Sure.
Is the project description inaccurate?
As it is written in the agenda, yes.
But that's the same as it's in the public notice.
Oh, because that's my next question. Is there a difference between the agenda and the public notice?
According to Ms. Hall, no.
Well, I have them both up. I mean, they're in the packet, and I just compared them, and they're identical.
That was the original project description back when it was originally submitted in 2021. The project was stopped, redesigned, and resubmitted.
Okay. So, and this is, I want to make sure that I understand this completely. So, is the when you say description of the property, of the application, does that mean that there's a different area where it is?
No, sir, it's the same lots.
Okay.
It is the same area. But the proposal changed. And then it met all of the Red Book requirements and moved into the freshwater wetland requirements.
Okay, so was different relief, you want to make sure I understand this. Is different relief needed with the pending application than what's noticed in,
Yes.
on, yes?
Yes,
Okay. You can have defects in notice and there's case law that says you can go forward on it, but not when it comes to the relief. There's a notice issue.
but under the Red Book regulations, it does not require public notice any longer.
Okay.
It meets the Red Book requirements for 150-foot buffer, for 25-foot setback.
Okay, is the relief, you're saying the relief sought didn't need public notice?
As it was redesigned, the relief sought moved from Red Book regulation relief to freshwater wetland regulation relief.
Okay, and the freshwater regulation relief isn't on the agenda and it's not on, in the public notice?
It did not require freshwater wetland public notice.
But it is in the application.
Can I ask a question? My understanding from your introduction is the difference between what's before us, what was originally going to be before us, had to do with the 5-foot bar.
Correct. It was originally
Are
proposed.
we dealing with the 5-foot bar or is that
All of that has been removed.
surplusage? Okay.
Correct. That is no longer part of the application.
So what makes that notice defective? We're not discussing tonight.
I can't speak to whether or not it's defective. That sounds like.
All right.
Correct. But it was,
What makes it inaccurate is not anything that we're discussing.
the project was redesigned such that no relief from the Red Book program was required.
What I'm worried about though is what the council has to do. I give you, this isn't addressed, you address the council. What I'm concerned about is what the council has to do tonight. It's not on the agenda. And wasn't, even though it didn't have to be in a public notice. I'm more concerned with the agenda. And it goes to the relief. You know what?
Yeah.
There's probably no opposition. I know it's a big project and a good project. But because it's so important, we probably want to do is just make sure that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. Hate to be a stickler about this stuff.
Mr. Lucia.
Yeah, so does it matter that it's in the reports? I mean, I know the agenda says one thing, but our reports describe the project. It's all described within, isn't that? Not
Here's the thing, the fact that the agenda doesn't match what's in the report. And this is what public notice is all about. Somebody could say later on, hey, you know what? I was concerned about the freshwater wetlands. I looked at the agenda and it didn't seem that was what they were going to talk about. That's my concern. Now, I take a broad view. Notice there are instances where there's been flaws in the notice and the courts have allowed that to go forward, but not for something like this. So I think it's my advice is, just continue the matter so that it's properly on the agenda. I hate to do this to you, but it's probably, you had to come out in the snow, but it's properly on the agenda.
You need a vote on that.
You do, yes.
Based on legal counsel's representation, I didn't entertain a motion to continue the matter and renotice it. Someone want to make the motion?
So moved.
Ms. Reynolds has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Hall has seconded it. I'll now pull the council. Ms. Izzy.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon. Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez. I too vote aye for the reasons on the record.
Can the matter be set down for your next meeting,
Yes.
which is in, I think, 2 weeks about?
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Clarification. When you say renotice, you mean just the agenda,
Yes.
not an additional public.
Yeah, you know, and I'm sorry I keep saying that because the term is interchangeable. It doesn't, you don't need to send out the public notice, but the agenda, the notice on the agenda needs to be corrected. That's all.
Okay.
Is it,
The belt and suspended approach.
I'm saying.
now that we're in compliance, as I understand from Amy with the red book, we're in compliance now with the red book. So we don't. Is that, you said that 2 or 3 times, is that?
Correct. It's my understanding that all we need to do is make sure the agenda description.
Yeah,
is
it,
accurate.
I mean, does that normally come back in when it's fully compliant?
It would still be before you because it is a freshwater wetland significant alteration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next matter will be 2022-06-127 4772 Old Post Road, LLC. It's an application to construct and maintain a 36 lot subdivision to be serviced by OWTS and private wells, new roadway, stormwater and landscaping. The proposal represents a watershed activity under the Salt Pond SAMP. The application also falls under the freshwater wetlands in the vicinity of the coast program / regulations. Located at Plat 7, Lot 51, 4772 Old Post Road, Charleston, Rhode Island. And I see the applicant is here, represented by counsel, correct?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Michael Resnick, legal counsel for the applicant. And I'm joined here this evening by the project engineer, Brian King from Crossman Engineering.
Mr. King, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Brian King, BRIANKING. Mr. Chairman, if I may, to the extent that Mr. King is going to provide any testimony or responses to the board, I ask for the opportunity to briefly qualify him as an expert in his field as an engineer.
All right.
May I respond?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, my advice to the board has always been now for the past several years that the qualification of an expert is unnecessary. Main purpose for that is so that the witness can give opinion testimony. My advice to the board is allow all witnesses to give their opinions and then judge it on the weight that you will give it later on.
Understood, thank you.
Okay. First we'll hear from staff, Ms. Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is before the council tonight as a category B application as a watershed activity under the Salt Pond Special Area Management Plan, also known as the SAM. Within this application, there are also some freshwater wetland regulatory issues. This application was submitted prior to the change in the freshwater wetland regulations and was reviewed under the old freshwater wetland regulation. There is a coastal wetland on the property classified as a type 2 wetland. There are several small isolated freshwater wetlands located on the site, only one of which is large enough for the old freshwater wetland 50-foot buffer zone. All of the smaller wetlands during the course of the preliminary determination under the SAMP were recommended to receive a 10-foot buffer zone. The application was submitted in early June 2022, like I said, prior to the freshwater wetland change. It meets all of the Salt Pond SAMP regulations as far as buffer zones and setbacks, as well as density around the contiguous coastal wetland, there is a 200-foot buffer zone. And there is a 225 setback for any septic systems in the area. The applicant has provided the 50-foot buffer zone under the larger freshwater wetland. And all the smaller wetlands receive a 10-foot buffer zone, with the exception of 2 small wetlands that do not receive the full 10-foot where there is a proposed road going between them. In that area where the road passes between the 2 small isolated wetlands, the applicant will be using retaining walls to minimize the area of impact and protect the wetlands as much as possible. This application was not required to go to public notice. However, several objections were received during the course of staff review. Many of the objections that were received mistakenly read, as far as I understand, mistakenly read the plans as having the road go through freshwater wetlands. It does not go through wetlands, it goes between 2 wetlands. Several of the concerns were regarding open space and some of the existing trails that are out there on the site. The applicant has stated the open space is noted for the subdivision and that all trails currently on site will be abandoned and allowed to revegetate. Anything future that falls within CRMC buffer zones, freshwater wetland, or the coastal wetland, they will apply to CRMC for any requisite buffer zone management as needed. The objections were furnished to the applicant and they did respond with a detailed response to the objections, which is included in the agenda packet. So as I stated, the application meets the requirements of the Salt Pond SAM and the old freshwater wetland regulations. Staff believes that the objections were adequately addressed. There are no objections to council approval of this application, and there are 2 recommended stipulations from staff in addition to standard stipulations should the council approve the application.
Have those 2 additional stipulations been communicated to the applicant?
Yes, they were provided with a report prior to the meeting.
Any questions of the council members of Ms. Silva? Seeing none, Attorney Resnick, please
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had the opportunity to review the staff report as well as the conditions contained therein and as well as the recommendations that were made. I've discussed the conditions with my client. We're amenable to those conditions. We agree to them. With respect to the staff report, we would request that the findings contained therein be adopted by this council with respect to an approval of the application before it. Mr. King would be happy to answer any questions with respect to the project and also to get into any detail with respect to our rebuttal to the objections that were sent to CRMC, whether it be by abutters in their individual capacity or those represented by attorneys. But we do believe that we've addressed those comments, and I think that the opposition's points were addressed comprehensively in the staff report, and we agree with the responses contained therein. So with that, unless there's any questions of the council for me, we have nothing further. And again, Mr. King, be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by council members of Mr. King and or Attorney Resnick? For the record, Attorney Resnick, could you identify the gentleman that just approached you?
Absolutely, I can, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Doug D. Simone, who's serving as a project manager on behalf of the applicant, is part of our project team. And he had just referenced that one of the conditions relative to the staff report indicated that the assent would be provided upon final approvals from the town, and we would be seeking for that assent to be provided in connection with our preliminary
Right, we need those, we can't proceed to final.
Excuse me.
I'll be sworn.
Yep.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is Douglas R. D. Simone, D. capital SIMONE, 25 Bluff Hill Cove Farm Road, Narragansett. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I am the project manager for this development and a representative, if you will, of both of the principals who were unable to attend this evening. If I'm not correct, and I may be incorrect, I was reading the condition that Ms. Silva had included, wherein she referenced that the homeowners association documents would be completed after having granted, after we had received final approval from the town. And I just wanted to make sure that that does not mean that the assent will not issue until after the final approval from the town, because we need the assent. Otherwise, we can't get on the agenda for the final approval with the town. I just want to clarify that.
We know, just so.
Yeah, I can clarify that. Yes, that language would be included as a stipulation of the assent that we issue.
Thank you very much, Andy.
And of course, in connection with our preliminary application to the town of Charleston, we'll be including all requisite legal documents, including a draft HOA. And it would be my expectation that they would agree to make a final executed legal documents, including the homeowners association, as a condition to final. So that will be certainly presented to CRMC immediately upon approval.
Any questions of the council of Mr. De Simone? Seeing none, I see Attorney Desatel here. Are you here on this matter?
Yes, sir. We are.
All right, you can come forward. Just for the record, identify yourself.
Good evening, Attorney Melissa Desitel. I represent a group known as the Arnolda Improvement Corporation. And to my left is the Arnolda Improvement Corporation's expert witness.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is Elisa Richardson, ALISA, Richardson, RICHARDSON.
You. Please proceed.
Thank you. As I indicated, I represent a group known as the Arnolda Improvement Corporation, or AIC for short. The AIC is comprised of property owners who own property either adjacent to or abutting the Summer Winds project. They anticipate experiencing significant impact from the subdivision as proposed and as you're discussing tonight. The AIC offers testimony of its expert consultant, Elisa Richardson, who will discuss the issues related to cumulative impacts and pollutant loading in the project area. These were comments that we submitted as part of the public comment period, and we do not think that they have been addressed adequately. So with that as background, I'd like to just have Elisa speak as to the technical issues here.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I should just briefly state for the record, I would like some explanation of the credentials and qualifications to offer expert testimony.
Well, you know, as I said previously, in the end, my advice to the council is that there won't be a finding of an expert status. However, I'm assuming that once Ms. Desatel gets going, she's going to discuss the witness's background and qualifications so that the board can adequately determine what weight to give to the testimony. Okay?
Yes, great. That was my next batch of questions. So thank you very much. Ms. Richardson, could you tell everyone where you currently work?
I currently work for the Department of Transportation. as the Director of Environmental Programs there.
But you're not here tonight in your capacity as an employee of DOT.
No.
Okay, so can you tell everyone in what capacity you're here tonight?
And representing the Arnolda community. And I do have 25 years of experience working at the Department of Environmental Management. I worked in the water quality certification program, in the wetlands program. I was the supervisor of the stormwater program for a number of years.
And is it fair to say that you began and are maintaining a separate consulting firm or consulting employment outside of what you're doing for DOT?
Yes, I've actually gotten approval to do this before the Ethics Commission. Exactly. Thank you.
All right, so just last question here as setting up the foundation for your credentials. Do you have any specific certifications with respect to this type of project, the Summerlin's project?
I'm a professional engineer. I am also a certified project manager and also have had like many years of experience in water quality. Hydrology, I have a master's degree, a bachelor's in engineering, a master's degree in hydrology and water quality.
And how long have you been in the water, what's called the water quality industry in Rhode Island?
32 years.
Okay.
Helped to write the stormwater manual too. So
When you say the stormwater manual, what are you talking
that's
about?
the Rhode Island residentism, as we call it, the Rhode Island Standards Installation Design Manual. And so I was assisting on writing actually the regulations that we're going to talk about in a moment.
Okay. Are you familiar with the project known as Summerlin's?
Yes,
How are you familiar with it?
I reviewed the file as it was provided to me.
Okay. And when you say you reviewed the file, what does that mean?
And some of the comments back and forth, the revised plans, those revised plans, and then to what we see as public notice here today.
Are you familiar with the CRMC's Salt Pond Special Area Management Plan?
Yes, they
How are you familiar with that document?
it's basically been used it from time to time, but also just read through it standard.
Did you read through it to prepare for tonight's testimony?
Yes,
And when you were reviewing the file materials?
yes,
Okay. Is it fair to say that this project is located in something called the land of critical concern?
yes.
And what does that mean?
So that means that it's just barely bordering, nitrogen is a concern in the salt ponds. And so you've got a carrying capacity that's allowed within that land area. And so this is not developed currently. And then once you develop it and you add wastewater treatment systems to it and stormwater treatment systems and impervious cover to it, you're going to increase the nitrogen loadings to that aquifer and to which eventually, once they hit the water table, they don't really dissolve or dilute in any way and continue to add pounds of nitrogen to the salt ponds. And in this situation, this particular development just borders a land, an area that's over the carrying capacity. And so if you add the two densities together, you're likely to, be over the carrying capacity. And I kind of analogize it to basically a straw that breaks the camel's back. There's a lot of nitrogen. I do have, issues in general with just the outs regulations and how that's not, just giving it that area of development of 120,000 square feet per acre is not really adequate when you're just continuing to add pounds and pounds development after development in development such as this.
And why is nitrogen such an issue for you with respect to this project?
Well, the Nantucket Pond is already has a TMDL, already is impaired water body for nitrogen. And the way that the TMDLs are created, it is by the pound. And so every septic system, even if it's an advanced nitrogen system, is still going to add pounds of nitrogen. Stormwater is still going to add pounds of nitrogen to the aquifer, which eventually is going to make its way into the Nantucket Pond.
And you said that you reviewed and are familiar with the salt pond SAMP. Could you tell us what the salt pond SAMP says about nitrogen reducing technologies.
Yeah, so one of the things they say in the salt pond sample about that. And is that it does recognize that in areas abutting the salt ponds, this is in 650 RICR 3.3.B.1. It says the tributaries and other critical resource areas, existing nitrogen reducing technologies may not be sufficient to reduce groundwater nitrogen concentrations to levels which will prevent further eutrophication in the salt ponds. If new technology improves the nitrogen removal capability of these systems and new research indicates the need for further nitrogen removal, CRMC will reevaluate the need for increased nitrogen removal.
If you know, are there any mitigation techniques that the project applicant could use on this project to deal with the anticipated nitrogen loading?
So I get it, you know, they have a right to develop their property to a certain extent. And using advanced nitrogen removal is the best that can be done in terms of the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, containing septic usage at the moment. But also there is another option. It's called a denitrifying border. And so in this case, we're recommending that the applicant install a denitrifying border at the edge of the neighbors downstream, which is down gradient and heads towards the salt pond. And some of the studies have shown us dramatic reduction in nitrogen by using this denitrifying border.
Could you tell us what the denitrifying border is? I'm not familiar with that.
It's a trench you would install in the water table and basically put wood chips in there. And that creates a bacterial situation that encourages denitrifying bacteria and is shown to reduce the nitrogen loadings to the inflow and outflow. There's a dramatic decrease in nitrogen between what comes upstream and then what exits downstream.
This concept of a denitrifying border, did you say that that came from materials that you reviewed at CRMC?
Yeah, it's actually on the website. The study that shows the reduction capabilities is right on the salt pond SAMP website, right on that page. So I guess that's basically what we're asking.
Okay, and is it then fair to say that this denitrifying border is something that CRMC itself is promoting for these type of projects?
Not always, I think so we asked for a pollutant loading analysis. And so if you put 36 wastewater treatment plants into an area that never had them before, you add 6 acres of impervious cover that never had it before, you use the stormwater treatment systems as they propose it. It's only 40% removal in the treatment systems that they propose. That's basic pollutant loading analysis. You're adding nitrogen to this area. You're sending it towards an area that's beyond the carrying capacity. Then you're sending it to the pond that's already impaired. So it's just continued add-on and add-on. And in some ways, I think some of the regulations are not quite protective enough, but there are some mitigating things that we can do. And so I don't know whether that's always offered, but in large subdevelopments, I know when I worked in the water quality certification program, we were asked to look at the impacts and carrying capacity all the way through to the salt ponds. And we have had recommended denitrifying borders in certain cases.
Okay, thanks. And lastly, I noticed that you are looking at this stack of materials here. Could you, with leave from the council, Elisa Richardson has prepared a little bit of a site plan that shows where this denitrifying border might go for illustrative purposes only. I'd like to be able to distribute copies so you can see what we're talking about.
That was last Thursday. There's a deadline to submit. And that was last Thursday.
Sure. So we're not asking for this to be part of the record. We just thought it would be helpful to illustrate the area that she's talking about with these denitrifying border.
Have you shown it to the opposing counsel?
Not yet. I've got copies for them.
Okay. You have an objection for illustrative purposes?
Well, I would object to the extent that all the materials that we're relying upon in support of the council approving this application have been with staff and with this council for some time. And Ms. DeCitel, our expert, as well as the clients, have had ample time to review it. And I received nothing until just now. So I would object to it, but to the extent that it's not going to be made an exhibit to the record, I will only press that so hard.
If someone's wants to make a motion just to use it for reference purposes, but not part of the record, that would be appropriate at this time.
So moved.
Second. A motion was made by Ms. Hall, seconded by Mr. Gomez. For the record, I'll do a roll call. Mr. Izzi.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon. Aye. Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too vote aye. Thank you.
Ms. Richardson, you've got again, illustrative purposes only, you've got a document in front of you that the council members now have as well. Could you explain what this document is?
So it's just a diagram of that was presented by the applicant themselves, and just identified a couple of areas of things that we wanted to discuss as part of this session today. And so the blue line that you see highlighted is where the abutters, were concerned about nitrogen in their wells and concerned about that down gradient direction towards the salt pond. And so that's where they're requesting this border installed.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other issues that you saw when reviewing the staff report and recent materials as part of your presentation for tonight?
Yeah. So I did see another layout of this development that you can see where the pink line is. Currently, there's an easement, and we just wanted to be assured that there's going to continue to be an easement here to access the stormwater, the underground injection control measure, the stormwater control measure. One of the plans that came recently with the responses to comments did not include that. So we just wanted to be assured that that easement, the neighbors are concerned about access to the South Arnolda Road, and any of those roadways have been and accesses have been the applicants no longer utilizing those. So we wanted to make sure that from that cul-de-sac, they would be able to maintain the stormwater treatment, stormwater control measures.
Okay. That's all I have for direct for Ms. Richardson. She's happy to answer questions from the council as well as the applicant.
Mr. Gomez.
I'm not familiar with the denitrification technique. You mentioned that basically a trench with wood chips or whatever to protect them, I guess. Does that require replenishment? And if so, how often?
It may, I'm not, sure, they haven't done the long-term studies on it. If so far, I think they've known it's lasted at least 10 to 20 years. So
the lifetime on that would be whatever, 10 to 20.
yes,
And it would need replenishment, which would involve, I guess, adding chips to it.
yeah,
And the surface of that would like be stone or something.
it could be grass.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So it
Like normal, like
wouldn't
it doesn't even exist.
be a real big deal, but it should,
Be.
if we decided that this was needed, we'd have to have a stipulation that somehow it gets replenished. All right. And the one other question, if I may, the 120,000 square feet, if if that were a larger number, or if we reduced some of the count of the plots here, would that do anything, or are we just trying to maintain the developer's wishes here with the count number, if you will, in the 120,000 square foot rule, and just the denitrification border would serve your purposes, I guess, is what I want to say.
So
It's a little over 2 acres or something.
that is what we're asking for, is the denitrification border.
Yeah.
Whether or not the 120,000 square feet and the whole policy of carrying capacity and above carrying capacity and pollutant loadings and where nitrogen degrades and it doesn't degrade is like a really big question overall in terms of council policy.
Is it,
And I think it's really maybe not even so much you as it is even the wastewater treatment, the outs policies.
should in the future, that 120,000 square foot requirement be revisited?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that, there's, there should be offsets or compensation somehow. Pick up stormwater from areas that aren't being treated at all. Take care of septic systems that do not have wastewater treatment or advanced wastewater treatment in the coastal areas. You can offset and meet those pollutant loading analyses through offsetting.
Of course, this is the all new development, so we
It's an
can
addition. I mean,
we can
losing
force-
three homes.
we can force
Yeah.
the most modern, I guess. Some of the other existing places, they have lifespans and if they're sold, they have to change things like that. So it's
Yeah.
a very slow process.
Yeah, it is. It's a slow process.
Okay, thanks.
Silva, did you want to address that? I saw you raising a hand. I think on that question.
Well, regarding the density, the salt pond SAMP for lands developed beyond carrying capacity has a required density of 1 to 120,000 square feet, unless the applicant utilizes nitrogen reducing technologies for their septic systems, in which case they can go to 1 to 80,000.
Thank you.
They are using nitrogen reducing outs technologies. Using 1 to 80,000 square feet, they could, under the SAMP regulations, put more units than are proposed. They are not, they are putting fewer than the 1 to 80,000 density would allow.
So Swally had a question?
Yeah, I had a question about the loading. You talked about a loading analysis for pollutants and particularly nitrogen. And I'm just looking at the location of this and I'm not, 100% familiar with this area, but, down gradient heading towards the salt pond, which is already has a impaired TMDL for nitrogen. Do you know of the loading from the current occupants in your is it AIC you called it? What that loading is into the salt pond?
I didn't do all of those calculations, but it does add to it. And and those houses are in an area beyond carrying capacity. That's previous development, the way it was before the regs have, become what they are today, which is, I agree, much better. It's just, I'm so the opinion that it's not enough.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking is your opinion on the loading of these particular homes in this particular area that you've provided with the map near that blue line is sort of isolated and not really relative to what we understand to be the current loading, or what you have shared with us is the current loading of those pre-existing homes.
I don't know if I understand the question.
Well, we don't know what the loading is of these pre-existing homes.
Correct. I mean, some of them might be on advanced systems, some may not. There's some myriad of homes surrounding the entire salt pond itself. There's a flushing analysis that goes along with it. I mean, it's a very advanced project to come up with who's responsible for every bit of loading. But in accordance with the Clean Water Act, that's an effort that has to be done by DEM, and then they have to assign certain reducing requirements to each of those, to the roadways, to the Department of Transportation, to the homeowners, and they try through various regulations. Let's remove, septic systems. Let's try to move towards advanced treatment. And so, we get, it is the way it is. And
So even if you said you asked for, but didn't get a pollutant loading analysis, I mean, it would be in complete isolation to what's happening around it. We would know
Right, and
what
that-
this development is loading, but it would not really help us to understand what the bigger picture is in terms of the TMDL and its impaired status for the pond.
that's a very good point. And so in accordance, when you have a TMDL and you have an impaired water body, technically, you're supposed to not increase any more loadings to that impaired water body. That's and the Clean Water Act is called the anti-degradation policy. And so we, in certain cases, I think I tried once with, certain developments, they had to get offset treatment in order to make their pollution a net zero. And so it doesn't really matter anybody else. We also work on those independently, but at least for this one, it can't make it worse.
In your opinion, Amy, is that it doesn't increase and doesn't make it worse? Is that what you had explained to us based on their nitrogen?
My opinion was that they met
operations.
the SAMP requirement to provide nitrogen using OWTS technology.
And I agree with Amy 100%. My issue is not with this necessarily with this. It's my issue is that I don't think that the 80,000 or the 120,000 necessarily is protected in and of itself. I think that
So your dispute is with the SAMP.
in some ways, However, I'm offering a mitigative opportunity here for the developer to mitigate to the maximum extent practicable. And this neighborhood would be exceptional.
Mr. Gomez, you have a question?
Those, your major concern appears to be those 8 lots down in kind of the,
Actually, it's not just the 8 lots. I mean, I think, if you're down gradient, it's all of those lots are moving in that direction of the
Oh,
current waters
okay,
are
okay.
flowing
Yeah.
that way. Yep.
got it.
Any resident, any questions of?
Wait, just, I'm sorry. Are all the questions done from the board, the council?
I think so.
Mr. DeSimone is here.
I understand. Your presentation is done.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and we're gonna be taking this up later on in the meeting. There's an opportunity for cross-examination and also an opportunity to wrap up, particularly since there was something that was passed out to the council that you didn't have a chance to see beforehand. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. DeSisto. I don't think that there's a reason I have no intent to do a cross-examination. We would like to just be able to rebut some of the comments that were made by Mr. DeSimone and Mr. King, and I just have a couple of brief comments, but I'm not going to subject this witness to examination.
Okay.
I just wanted the council to know that this application, although it's just coming to you and you're seeing it now, this has been going on, well, I'm gonna say almost to the better part of 5 years. And this developer has worked diligently with staff here and at DEM. And this is development that started out being substantially larger. Substantially. In excess of 52, 53, maybe 54 lots. And that was a complying subdivision. That subdivision, with all of those lots, complied with regulation. So in response to comments received from neighbors, received from staff, received from DEM, the size of development has come down significantly. The use of the open space, there's 72 acres of open space here. The use of open space has been completely passive, whereas previously it was active and it could have interfered potentially with neighbors' use and enjoyment of their property. This developer has done all of that. I heard tonight there was some concern about South Arnold Road and an easement. The easement is there for maintenance of a wastewater facility, correct, Brian?
No, excuse me.
Let him correct that, because it's important that they hear that.
At the cul-de-sac, there is an easement to maintain the stormwater management system that is in that back area of the open space. So this homeowners association will be responsible for the maintenance and operation of the stormwater systems. And that will be a easement for a maintainer to get back there and inspect it and maintain it on a yearly basis.
If I may, during the presentation from opposition, I think it was made clear and it was acknowledged that the problems are not with this application. With this application or this staff's review or the recommendations or conclusions or conditions, but with the regulations themselves. And we are not here to debate the regulations. That's a legislative process. So what I would say is that these comments were addressed at great length in our opposition. They were addressed in certain sections of your staff report. One in the stormwater section where it was indicated that the OWTS denitrification systems are in accordance with the SAM plan, and that there was a preliminary subdivision suitability determination that was issued for this project and this plan set by the Department of Environmental Management. And then in the staff report, the water quality issue is addressed again, and based on the denitrification systems that have been implemented into the project, there was a finding that all water quality protections requirements were in place. And as Mr. DeSimone said, we have reduced the lots on this project significantly from the time that this was initially before the town of Charleston by way of a master plan. And I heard from your staff that in fact, the capacity here that we're quite a bit under. I think that 120 was the number I heard, and that we would be at around 80. So again, I think that the testimony is mostly focused with issues with the regulations themselves. And the other comment that I would have with respect to the denitrification border in this exhibit that we received this evening of this illustrative demonstrative, I'm not aware of where in the regulations this type of denitrifying border is referenced. I know that there's a study that was just referenced, but that's certainly not part of the regulations. And it also seemed to be that this is a technology that it's at its infancy that's being currently evaluated. In fact, I believe that I heard the witness state that the life cycle of these and other items and when they would need to be replaced or revitalized was presently unknown. And we weren't given any specifics as to what this denitrifying border would look like, what the depth would be. And quite frankly, I don't see it as an appropriate mechanism per the regulations. If there's a study and someday it's found to be an appropriate measure to obviate these concerns in these areas, then that will be an appropriate time to look at that. But unless Mr. King wants to add anything to that or has any familiarity with these denitrifying borders, I'm not familiar with it in the regulations. I don't think it would be appropriate technology to rely upon.
I don't think it's necessary. We are proposing denitrification, nitrogen removal rather, technology with the OWTS systems, the Advantex AX20. And the nice thing about that is those systems, just like the stormwater systems, they have an operation and maintenance plan. There is someone that is hired. Every homeowner has to hire someone to inspect and maintain the system, and they can monitor it. They can see how effective it is. They can make adjustments if needed to make sure that it meets the requirements of the CRMC.
And if I may just add very, very briefly, staff in fact asked for us to provide additional details as to operation and maintenance of those systems. And that was provided on December 28th, 2022. That's an operation and maintenance a manual program relative to those technologies.
Okay, Ms. Swope? Oh, Mr. Gagnon, I saw it peripherally, sorry, Mr. Gagnon, yes.
Is there a limit on the size of the houses and the number of bedrooms in each of these lots?
4-bedroom is the max. But that's what we have the subdivision suitability permit for, is 4 bedrooms.
Would the septic systems, the OWTS, for each plot be scaled to at least the 4-bedroom?
Yes. They have that. And we submitted that to DEM.
Regardless, it could be a 2-bedroom, but we would require a 4-bedroom unit. Is that correct? Is that what you just said?
No, that's not what I meant. What I meant to say is, the subdivision suitability approval is based on a 4-bedroom house, and those systems are sized for a 4-bedroom house.
I own a 2-bedroom house, but I was forced by the state to put in a 4-bedroom septic system.
Sometimes they
It would seem
do a study,
reasonable.
something like that as a
I
bedroom.
don't know who's the septics on these, but I would, you know, it would seem to me that each lot should have at least a 4-bedroom septic, but I don't know if that's in our purview. Your water source for the houses is wells.
On-site wells, yeah, and they maintain 150-foot separation from any other DPS.
Have you seen any saltwater intrusion in that area at all into these wells? Into wells, not in the area. I know that's becoming a problem with climate change and things, especially places down in the Newport area and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of problems starting to occur. So I just was curious on your wells, your water source. All right, and I think I agree with you that you're working with the present regs, and I think that maybe CRMC needs to take a look at some of the regs we have to look at some of these problems in the future. What you indicated, I agree with.
Anything else, Attorney Resnick?
No, that would conclude our presentation. Thank you, members of the council.
Mr. Chairman, yes, before deliberations, so we don't have an exhibit, a de facto exhibit. I'd ask the council members to please hand them up to me. Thank you.
That's for doing that. I do have a question of Rich and Amy. My review of the worksheet indicates, I believe you both signed off on it, one from a biologist perspective, the other from an engineer, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and and both of them indicate no objection at the time of the signature here, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and I would ask whether any of the testimony or evidence that's been presented here this evening changes your opinion.
It doesn't change my opinion of the project. It meets the regulations. With all due respect to Lisa, I understand her concern about the defined border. As far as my understanding of that systems, they've had basically small scale experiments with these systems. I'm not that familiar with it. I just know that this project meets the regulations as far as having denitrification units for each of the wastewater treatment systems. So it meets our regulations and what is required of our regulations.
So your opinion of no objection has not changed, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Silva, same,
My opinion of no objection has not changed.
thank you. Any questions from the council? Hang on. Is the council in a position to make a motion on this application?
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Reynolds,
Based on the presentations and the findings in the staff report, I make a motion to approve the application with the standard stipulations, and I believe there were 2 additional stipulations than before.
is there a second? Mr. Gomez has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I poll the council. The motion has been made and seconded to approved as indicated by Ms. Reynolds, seconded, Mr. Izzy. Aye. Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon, Ms. Reynolds,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
I,
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Have a good evening. Drive safe.
You guys as
Thank you.
well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next matter before us is an enforcement case before the full council for review and action. 2022-0089 Noah Gabriel require restoration of plat Y-3, lot 186 Daytona Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island, which was the subject of unauthorized alterations of a freshwater wetland, as well as unauthorized filling and clearing of vegetation within a contiguous freshwater wetland located at. Are we expecting Mr. Gabriel? We are not. We did not expect them to be here.
May I address?
Yes, Mr. DeSisto.
And the reason I'm wedging my way in at this point is because the property owner made several allegations. But one of them was that he intended to file a lawsuit under 42 USC section 1983, which is a civil rights action. And once that happened, staff, particularly Devin, gave me a call on this for some advice as she marched forward on this application. By email, and it might have even been by Laura, for an email just letting the property owner know that the matter would be heard at tonight's meeting. He said that he would not attend, and if the council wanted to, they could continue it. Now, your regulations call for continuances to be in writing and specific. In my opinion, that does not constitute a request for a continuance. There has been no evidence or documents that have been presented to staff which would indicate that the conclusions they reached after their inspection, which was done on site, not only with the property owner present, but with also a consultant that he had hired being present, that their conclusions are incorrect. The response has been a reference to the United States Constitution and the property rights that he has. That's why I'm going to make the recommendation that this matter proceed tonight, notwithstanding the fact that Mr. Gabriel is not here. And I'll leave it to staff, particularly Devin, to explain exactly what happened here, but I wanted to give that background before this started. When she's done, I'll address any questions you might have as to the legalities.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, please.
Before
Ms.
we
Dizzy.
begin, could I just have a clarification? I read Mr. Gabriel's emails. I think there were more than one. He did make a reference to, I think, a request for a continuance on or about February 14th. Are you
Yes, I am.
aware
He said,
what he's referencing?
if you like. And the question to me from that email, when that was referenced, was if the council wanted to continue it, he wouldn't object to that. But that wasn't a request by him for a continuance. And you know, I'm gonna make a statement here. Based on my experience with this client and others that are regulatory, it's always gonna be like that. So you might as well just plow ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
need any other discussion?
Well, yeah, Devin is going to.
I don't want to steal any thunder down.
No, she'll tell you the specifics.
Quick while you're ahead. I think.
And upon the factual basis upon which you're here now.
All right,
Mr.
thank you,
Robinson.
Mr. Chair and Tony. This is for lot Y3, lot 186, Daytona Avenue in Narragansett, owned by Noah Gabriel. On April 27th, 2022, the town of Narragansett had notified CRMC enforcement staff of a violation on the property. On that same day, Laura Miguel and I inspected the site And we had found that there had been unauthorized fill located within a contiguous freshwater wetlands and unauthorized vegetative clearing. This is prohibited under the Coastal Resources Management Program. There was also a culvert that was installed in an area subject to storm flowage and a driveway that was installed over that culvert. This would require a CRMC permit under the rules and regulations governing the protection and management of the freshwater wetlands and the vicinity of the coast. This property is also located in Salt Pond, in the Salt Pond Special Area Management Plan. A cease and desist order was issued on May 4th, and it was discussed with Mr. Gabriel that the wetland delineation needed to be completed by a qualified professional, or an application for a preliminary determination could be submitted. Mr. Gabriel plans on getting a wetland delineation. From May through October, we had multiple phone conversations and email exchanges with Mr. Gabriel, and plans to resolve this violation. On September 27th, Mr. Gabriel notified us that he had hired Ecosystem Solutions Inc. and they had completed a wetland delineation. He asked us to review the wetland flagging. On October 12th, myself and Sean Philly conducted a site visit and did not agree with the wetland flagging. On October 20th, myself, Laura Miguel, and Sean Philly met with Mr. Gabriel and his consultants at his property. We dug multiple soil plots and we found finding hydric soil. We had all agreed that the wetland delineation was incorrect and that most of the property contains contiguous freshwater wetlands. It was also discussed that CRMC has files for nearby lots where preliminary determinations were completed and these lots were determined to have contiguous freshwater wetlands. From October 21st until just recently, as of yesterday, February 27th, we've received multiple emails from Mr. Gabriel indicating that he does not plan to comply to restore the wetlands and that he does not intend to be present at this hearing. As you noted, some of these emails are in the enforcement report as attachments. Just as of this morning, February 28th, the town of Narragansett notified us that there had been tree clearing at the property yesterday. We conducted a site visit today and we found that multiple trees had been cut and many of the remaining trees that were there were limbed. There were also piles of vegetation, cut vegetation on the property. Enforcement staff is recommending that the council issue an order to restore that requires Mr. Gabriel to restore the site in its entirety by May 15th, 2023. We also recommend that the council requires Mr. Gabriel to submit an acceptable restoration plan prepared by a qualified professional by April 1st of 2023.
Thank you. Any questions of Devin? Mr. Gomez?
Did we do a cease and desist or is that what we want to do?
Yep, there was a cease and desist order issued on May 4th,
What, and it was done when?
May 4th, 2022.
They cut trees yesterday, so that's how much he ceased and desist.
Yeah. Well, and what's the end product that we're looking for? Plant the trees back or plus fines? Yeah, good. But that makes sense to me. But
Ms. Hall?
So the cease and desist was issued, obviously not complied with. Was there any discussion at the staff level of going forward straight to court to follow up on with the ability of the under the law to have that preliminary injunction sought to have that violation stopped?
May I answer that?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a cease and desist. At first, the property owner was cooperative and met with staff on site, had the plan. Things kind of went sideways. And there wasn't much activity on the property until recently. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So my concern with going directly to court back then was that the defense would be, you didn't go through all the administrative process. So I think with an order from here, based on recent events, you're in a better procedural posture.
So is the idea that we issue another cease and desist? It doesn't seem to be what you're asking for.
No.
Just in order to
In
restore.
order to restore.
Okay.
Devin, The two pictures that are attached to your memo. They look like the same picture. I don't see anything else that was cut down yesterday in the picture that you took today versus the picture from April 27th.
So the first photo is taken a little closer up. The second photo that I took today is from across the street. So it includes trees that were cut that you can't see in the first photo. It looked like to me there were some trees cut behind the rock, and then there were stumps. In the second photo, you can see near the road.
In the foreground.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then to the right of that. We didn't walk on the property today, we stayed on the street, so I can go and specifically count all the trees that have been cut.
Do you have the photographs from the town of Narragansett?
I can answer that. We do have the photographs from the town of Narragansett. They were forwarded to us this morning, but we could not authenticate them. So we felt that instead of introducing them as part of the package, we would just take our own photos.
Okay. All right. Those are all the questions I have.
If there are no more questions, I will move that we do the order for restoration. I think is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, in order to restore by,
It's just stupid, the whole thing's stupid.
in order to restore by May 15th, 2023, and also acceptable restoration plan that will be prepared by a qualified professional by April 1st of 2023,
So
so that we can.
the motion that we need is one for restoration. Is there anything to be added to that? Or?
Well, I think she's asking.
Yeah.
That you have a restoration plan by April 1.
Okay, again, I got old ears. You speak very softly. Fine. So the motion should contain by April 1, a restoration plan be delivered to Coastal Resources. Is that, will I do it? Yes.
And restoration by April 15th.
Oh, I thought it was April 1st.
I'm sorry, May 15th. May 15th.
An acceptable restoration plan by a qualified professional by April 1st,
Right.
2023, and then in order to restore by May 15th, 2023.
Whatever she said. Yes.
Yeah, make just make
Final
an
plan
informal
by May
motion, yes.
Okay. That's all.
So given Attorney DeSisto's prefacing about this particular respondent, what's the next plan? Like, what is it that's going to happen here that's going to be any different than the interactions you've already had? So I'm just curious, like, we'll sit here tonight and, you know, have a restoration plan by a certain date.
We're building up.
Can
to a fine.
I?
I just am curious what the plan is, because
Okay.
it seems like we're going to be right back here again on whatever comes after May 15th.
Let me just ask a question for proper procedural sake. We have a motion. Should we get a second and then make this
Yes.
part of the discussion?
Yes,
All right, Mr. Gomez has made that motion. Can we get a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Ms. Hall has seconded the motion and has started some discussion.
okay, there's, to me, there's two scenarios that are gonna take place here. The first one is that the property owner does indeed file a 1983 action, either in Superior Court or in Federal District Court. That's the first thing. He will allege that there's been a regulatory taking here. That's the first thing. If the property owner does not do that, and if the property owner does not restore the property, give the plan, which, you know, seems based on the travel to date is a likely scenario. The next step would be for a declaratory judgment action to be filed with injunctive relief, requesting a mandatory injunction, ordering the applicant to restore the property. Now, I was discussing this with Jeff earlier. It was a case some years ago where a fellow installed a marina without any permits at all. And then it was damaged and actually there was a lot of damage to the estuary. The case that the lawsuit that I just referenced was filed. The injunction was granted by Superior Court. There wasn't any compliance. When you have civil contempt, which is what we did, we asked for a contempt order. The first one was fines. They weren't paid. Then what did Judge Taft Carter? Her next step was to incarcerate the defendant. That's the way these things go. So I think procedurally, this is what you're looking at here. You're establishing the bases for hopefully there's compliance, but if there isn't, then your next route is in court.
So in other words, there's not going to be a request back to the council. If there's no restoration by the 15th, it will go straight to legal counsel at that time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? The motion has been made and seconded. I will now pull the council. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon. Aye. Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Cory, vote aye. And I think for our agenda, next matter is, we need a motion that went to executive session.
Correct, yes.
I'd entertain a motion to proceed to executive session. Motion made by Mr. Gagnon, seconded by Mr. Gomez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, it has to be a roll call. All right. So, Mr. Izzy, we have a motion. Oh, I didn't have a motion. And a second to go into executive session. So now, Mr. Izzy. Aye. Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon. Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Cory, vote aye. We will now proceed to executive session. Lights are on.
Okay.
All right, we are back. At this time, I would entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Izzy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gagnon. I will now poll the council. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Cory, vote aye. We are now out of executive session. I would entertain a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Izzy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Reynolds. I will now poll the council. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Cory, vote aye. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to instruct legal counsel to withdraw the appeal, the Troiano case.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we instruct our legal counsel to withdraw the Supreme Court appeal in the case of Troiano versus CRMC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Mr. Izzy, seconded by Ms. Hall. Any discussion? Hang on, I will now poll the council. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Cory, vote aye. Lastly, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Can I do a voice vote on that? Or-
No, you can just, it's just, yeah. just
Right,
voice vote.
motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, anyone opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Everyone, please travel safe.